Hello and welcome to the news on NTA International. I am Lami Ali. Franklin Efe is with me for the sign language. Let's take the headlines. U.S. government strengthens diplomatic ties with African continents with the visit of Vice President Kamala Harris. King Charles commends German government for its benevolence towards Ukrainian refugees. And Nigeria's First Lady Aisha Buhari converses need for well-meaning Nigerians to promote cardiovascular and thoracic surgeries. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris sets out for the final stop of her week-long trip to Lusaka in Zambia after a major announcement to boost trade in Tanzania. Charles Alpha reports.
Kamala Harris' visit to Zambia is raising excitement in the country and some nostalgia. Harris has a personal connection to Zambia where she spent more with her Indian grandfather, who sparked her interest in public service. They may be excited, but the global rivalry between the United States and China has been a recurring backdrop for Harris' journey, and nowhere has that been more apparent than Zambia and her previous stop in Tanzania. Beside the airport, China built a 60,000-seat stadium in Lusaka, plus roads and bridges around the country. Zambia is one of the hooks for all the development with billions of dollars in debts, but like she did in Tanzania, will Kamala Harris or the U.S. be making another major economic pronouncement for Zambia? Only time will tell. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Now, earlier in the day, I spoke with the Tanzanian High Commissioner to Nigeria, Dr. Benson Bana. He shared his opinion on the gains of the visit of the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris to Tanzania. Your Excellency, sir, can you help us put in some perspective on what the visit of the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris means to your country and Africa?
The visit of Her Excellency Kamala Harris into Tanzania, it is an honor not only to the United Republic of Tanzania, but also to the African continent in its entirety. It's a kind of respect that the current U.S. administration accords to the African continent. It is also a recognition that Tanzania, when it comes to good governance, democracy, is somewhat a role model in the region of Eastern Africa. The reason why I think she chose to visit Tanzania. So the coming of Her Excellency Kamala Harris into Tanzania, it is an honor to Africa, it's an honor to Tanzania, and we must take that as a positive step towards strengthening and broadening the bilateral ties between the United States of America and the United Republic of Tanzania.
All right, let's look at some of the comments made by the Vice President during the visit. Now, she said there's going to be over $1 billion of empowerment intervention funds, particularly for women and youth in Tanzania, Ghana, and Zambia. Now, in what specific areas can these funds be channeled so that they would have the desired impact?
First of all, we must thank the American people for being able to donate that much for the purpose of enhancing the youth and the women on the African continent. In the Tanzania context, the said amount, I think, will be injected into youth empowerment, through entrepreneurship development, into women empowerment, by facilitating some support to women who show seriousness in running business, in becoming independent, and enhancing their economic potential, and contribute add value to the entire society. That is a plus. I think the rest should be invested in ICTs, in education, in health, especially combating the pandemics and the epidemics, and the areas that really would help Africa and Tanzania eradicate poverty, disease, and ignorance.
Going forward and looking into the future, how will this visit enhance bilateral relations between Tanzania and the U.S.?
This visit is important to us. First of all, it resonates well with the Tanzania's foreign policy, which is anchored on economic diplomacy. The visit would open up commercial and economic engagements between the Tanzanian people and the American people through what we refer to as business-to-business engagements. A lot of products would be imported into Tanzania, would be exported from America into Tanzania, high-tech products, products of high value. Again, Tanzania will benefit from cybersecurity arrangements and related ICT facilities. And secondly, a Tanzanian businessmen and women would have the opportunity to export to the United States the products that are produced in Tanzania. So there are so many areas in which this visit, areas of engagements, will help to champion and to develop, to get the benefits of Tanzania economic diplomacy policy, which is the heart of Tanzania's foreign policy.
We thank you, Dr. Benson Bana, for sharing those perspectives.
Thank you, Ma, for having me.
In other news, King Charles III says both the UK and Germany stand together with Ukraine in defense of freedom and sovereignty of the country. The king was paying tribute to Germany's extraordinary hospitality towards Ukrainian refugees during his first state visit as monarch. Charles Alpha reports.
King Charles heaped praise on the generosity of the spirit of the German people for taking in more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees displaced as a result of the ongoing conflict with Russia. He said both governments stand side by side in protecting and advancing shared democratic values and in defense of the freedom and sovereignty in the face of unprovoked aggression. King Charles' 3 days tour with Camilla, the Queen Consort, comes after a planned visit to France was cancelled following unrest in several cities over pension reforms. The British government hopes the King's visit will reinforce relations between the two nations following UK's decision to leave the EU. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Now, a public affairs analyst, Chris Aguirre, spoke with NTA News on the implications of the visit of King Charles to Germany.
The visit of King Charles III, his first official state visit to Germany, is part of those dynamics of nation building and then strengthening international relations in the new world order. That's an emerging new world order following the onslaught, following the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And then, of course, this is also his first visit officially as the king, as the monarch. If you look at the significance of that, he's talking about strengthening economic relations. It's about economy. It's about who gets what. And of course, following the Brexit, and Britain was getting somehow isolated. And so they need to re-engage differently, different nations. And of course, you know that the European economy, Germany is a key player. It's the strongest economy in Europe. And then, well, more or less the European war, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he mentioned that they will work together, and that thanking Germany for accepting about 1 million refugees from Ukraine. And the lessons to learn on that is this, that no nation is isolated. You can't do it alone. As rich, as strong as British may look like, you find out that he's embarking on this European tour, first for economic reasons, to strengthen, with the Brexit now, Britain had to negotiate one-on-one with other countries instead of the common EU market.
Chris Aguirre there speaking on the visit of King Charles to Germany. Now let's join Charles Alpha again for more global news.
Donald Trump faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud in an indictment from a Manhattan grand jury, with Trump due to appear in court on Tuesday. The indictment has been filed under seal and will be announced in the coming days. The charges are not publicly known at this time, but Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office has been investigating the former president in connection with his alleged role in a hush money payment scheme. And Donald Trump has since reacted to the indictment. Elsewhere, Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso faces impeachment trial over corruption charges. And court has allowed hostile Congress to proceed with case against unpopular conservative leader. The Ecuador's president will be tried by a hostile Congress for alleged corruption after the Constitutional Court gave the go-ahead for impeachment. And in India, death toll in India temple collapse has risen to 35, with rescue and security personnel carrying devotees after the floor covering a stepwell collapse at the temple in Indore, India. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Nigeria reacts to financial crisis in the banking sector in the US and Europe. World Bank and the Republic of Niger agree on financial support. Details of this and more with Musa Baba Aliyu.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has assured that the collapse of banks in the United States and financial crisis in Europe will not affect the banking sector in the country. The Apex Bank, through the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, assured depositors of the safety of their money against any bank failures. The CBN and NDIC supervise money deposit banks to ensure their safety and efficient running. In other news, the Nigeria's public debt stock, which includes external and domestic debts, stood at 46.25 trillion naira, that is $103.11 billion in the fourth quarter of 2022. The figures rose from 44.06 trillion naira, that is $101.91 billion in the third quarter of 2022. The International Court of Justice rejects Iran's bid to unlock nearly $2 billion in assets belonging to its central bank that were frozen by the United States over alleged terror attacks. But while the court based in Hague rules it has no jurisdiction over the bank funds, it finds that Washington has violated the rights of some Iranians and companies whose assets were also frozen.
The court concluded that the United States has violated its obligation under Article 4, Paragraph 1 of the Treaty of Amity.
And from Niger Republic comes a report that the president of the World Bank, David Malpass, had a bilateral talks with the president, Mohamed Bazoum.
Très important, nous sommes le pays.
The two leaders agreed on partnership towards boosting the economy of Niger, which is ranked among the poorest in the world.
Niger faces climate changes, the challenges from its borders, and also, very importantly, the education challenge, which is so huge. Niger has great opportunity, and that is what we should seize on, the opportunity to improve things.
And South Africa's central bank raised its main lending rates by a higher than 50 basis point to 7.75%. South Africa's rand extended earlier gains to rise nearly 2% against the dollar after the interest rate decision. Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
You're watching the news on NTA International from our Abuja studio, Nigeria's capital city. We take a break now. More stories when we return to stay. In the face of incremental negative perceptions about African countries propagated by the international media in the Global South, African broadcasters are building new partnerships to promote the telling of African stories in ways that reflect the true African perspective. As the first Turkey Radio, Television and African Union of Broadcasting Summit ongoing in Istanbul, Turkey, media executives and journalists are exchanging ideas on the correct representation of Africa to the global community. Onengie Fanface is there.
Stories about Africa in the international media have always been about negatives portraying hunger, war, violence, and other unsavory issues. But there are a lot more about Africa than these. There are beauty, culture, education, advancement in technology, and others.
Africans need to tell their own story in their own way, because nobody knows your story more than you. So it is only natural, it's only the right thing to do for us to tell our stories in our own way. If you look at the Western media or other media, internet, some people outside Africa, what do they know about Africa are negative things. But we know there are a lot of positive issues to report in Africa.
The media in Africa is therefore expected to tell these unique African stories, a task being promoted by the African Union of Broadcasting in partnership with Turkey Radio Television.
One of the main themes today is we want to challenge this status quo, and we want to discuss how we can break this hegemony that exists in the media itself. When we talk about the global media, especially media in the global south.
They have TRT Africa, and we believe that we have to diversify our relation with every people in the world who can contribute to build this continent.
But now we need to get into partnerships that can make us do things that would be a win-win. That is, in as much as we want to consume Turkish content, we should be able to make sure that they too can consume Cameroonian content.
This meeting of broadcasters across Africa with their Turkish counterparts is building capacity on telling African stories from the African perspective.
Coming in of TRT Africa, we hope that the African voice will be more amplified, and we hope that African stories will be told in a positive way.
Especially this summit that TRT has actually organized, which is, I think, is going to go a long way in helping African countries exchange or share best practices as far as the journalism profession is concerned.
The TRT AUB First Broadcasting Summit precedes the launch of the TRT Africa service in Istanbul, Turkey. Onengie Fineface, NTA News.
And here in Abuja, President Muhammadu Buhari has admonished governors-elect on the platform of the APC to keep faith with the ideals of the governing party and discharge their duties with high sense of responsibility and patriotism when formally inaugurated. This was when he granted audience to those from Katsina and Gombe states. State House correspondent Adam Sambu brings us the story.
The Katsina State Governor-elect, Dr. Umaru Dikko was accompanied to the State House by the incumbent governor of the state, Aminu Bello Masari. Dr. Rada presented his certificate of return to the president, whom he formally appreciated for his guidance and support that resulted in his victory at the polls.
The victory we got in Katsina, it has his own input because we leverage on what he has done to Katsina State and to Nigeria as well. He has always been advocating for transparency and accountability in government, and he has always urged us to be fair to Almighty God in discharging our responsibility. So I think we are going to do our work diligently, and we ensure that we are transparent and accountable to the people of Katsina as much as we can.
During the visit, the governor-elect used the opportunity to brief the president on what he called their strategic policy for Katsina State.
Just day before yesterday, we inaugurated strategic policy review committees. We want to kickstart our work immediately we are sworn in as governors. I have said it over and over that security is our first priority. This is what we are going to give much attention. Security is very cardinal in the economic development of any society. And agriculture is one of the major areas of employment in our state, and it's a major area of livelihood to our people. So we must provide security to our people, and we promise to involve the locals, and we promise to involve use of technology in tackling the security issues in my state.
Gombe State Governor-elect Muhammad Inuwa Yahaya also came calling to show President Muhammadu Buhari his certificate of return. Inuwa Yahaya, who is rounding off his first term of office, brought the president up to speed on his administration's signature projects awaiting inauguration. One of them is the Muhammadu Buhari Industrial Park project, aimed at enhancing the state's economy and creating job opportunities. Discussions also centered on the prevailing peace enterprise in Gombe State, as well as its emergence as Nigeria's best in ease of doing business, the second time in 3 years under his watch. The president also received in audience the Jigawa State Governor Muhammad Badaru Abubakar, but details of their meeting held behind closed doors were not disclosed. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
And the First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, has called on well-meaning Nigerians to remain committed to the promotion of cardiovascular and thoracic surgeries in Nigeria. The First Lady stated this in a message during the meeting of the Association of Cardiovascular and Thoracic Surgeons of Nigeria. State House correspondent Aliu Kabir reports.
With a theme, cardiovascular and thoracic surgical practice in Nigeria, sustaining new frontiers, the First Lady, in a message, expressed optimism with the level of commitment of all stakeholders towards promoting vascular interventions in the country, calling on all hands to be on deck to achieve target.
With my interest in contributing significantly to the development and sustenance of advanced cardiac care in the country, I hope to collaborate with more local and international organizations for personal training and equipping of centers in Nigeria. This is to afford world-class cardiac care to our people.
Stakeholders from the MDAs as well as the lawmakers promised to sustain collaboration to facilitate the development of cardiac and thoracoscopic surgeries in the country. In Abuja, Aliu Kabir, NTA News.
National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Abdullahi Adamu, says the resilience and voluntary services by committed support groups added value to the success of APC as the poll. Salihu Gwanara reports that National Secretariat of the APC played host to leaders of some support groups.
After securing victory at the February 25th presidential election, their target is towards May 29, when the president-elect will formally take the mantle of leadership. As support groups, they pledged useful services towards a peaceful transition.
I normally, it's my style to say together, because together we pulled and together we won. But some of us did not do what they are supposed to do. Some of us did not do enough. If we went by their standard, this victory would not have been possible. So we must guard against the future.
So that we can focus on keeping to the promises we have made to Nigerians during the election campaign.
Meanwhile, National Vice Chairman Northwest of the All Progressives Congress, Saliu Mohammed Lukman, wants the Independent National Electoral Commission to review the governorship elections in states where the exercise was declared inconclusive.
In cases where it can be established, and there are those cases where electoral officers clearly compromise, INEC should take steps to correct it, including taking disciplinary measures.
March 18 governorship elections in Kebbi and Adamawa states have been declared inconclusive. In Abuja, Saliu Gwanara, NTA News.
And those are the stories that made the news at this time on NTA International. We thank you for watching. Remember, rape is a crime. Join NTA in the advocacy against rape and rapists. I am Lami Ali. Efe Franklin has been the sign language interpreter. Have a good weekend.